As we inch closer to the 2024 presidential election, the current polling data reveals a complicated and often conflicting narrative that demands an in-depth examination. With less than 20 days left until Election Day on November 5th, dissecting these polling numbers is crucial for understanding their potential implications on the electoral outcomes. On this discussion, I'll aim to connect the dots between the present polling landscape and the historical data from the 2020 election. We will look at each state's unique electoral dynamics, thus presenting a clearer picture of how the electoral map might unfold. Let's begin with Minnesota, a state with a long-standing reputation for leaning Democratic. The latest polls indicate that Vice President Kamala Harris has an average lead of 4.7 over her Republican rival. However, digging deeper into historical election results raises some red flags about the reliability of this lead. In 2016, Hillary Clinton was projected to secure Minnesota comfortably, yet her actual victory margin was only 1.5. Fast forward to 2020, when Joe Biden was expected to win by a larger margin, he only managed a 2.5 lead. This historical trend of underperformance raises questions about the perceived Democratic advantage. And if we adjust for historical polling errors, particularly a consistent underestimation of Republican support in Minnesota, it's plausible that Trump could not only close the gap, but even take the lead. He suggests a potential shift in voter sentiment that could be critical for the Republicans, compelling us to categorize Minnesota as leaning red, while acknowledging the likelihood of significant movement in Trump's favor. Now let's turn our attention to Iowa, a state that has been a bedrock for Republican support. Current polling shows Trump with a lead of approximately 4. In previous elections, Trump won Iowa by margins of 9 in 2016 and 8 in 2020. These historical figures prompt us to question whether the current polls accurately reflect the sentiments of Iowa's voters. When we apply historical adjustments based on polling trends, it becomes clear that Trump could very well secure Iowa by a larger margin, potentially up to 10.2. He reinforces Iowa's classification as likely red, emphasizing the strong Republican base in this state and suggesting the potential for an even more significant Republican presence in the upcoming election. Before we get into the details, hit the subscribe button, like this video, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for your support. Next, we look at Wisconsin, a state that has become a major battleground in recent elections. Polling averages currently show Harris with a slim lead of around 0.3. This slight advantage does not indicate a secure position for Democrats. In fact, when we analyze past performance, it becomes evident that Democrats have often been overestimated in their polling numbers in Wisconsin. In 2016, Clinton was projected to win by a significant margin, yet she lost the state. Even Biden's victory in 2020 was by a narrow 0.6. By making adjustments to account for these historical inaccuracies, we find that Trump could have a slight lead of approximately 5.9. Given these insights, we classify Wisconsin as likely red, highlighting the state's unpredictable nature and its critical role as a battleground. Moving on to Michigan, a state that has long been viewed as a Democratic stronghold. We see indications of a changing political climate. Harris currently leads by 1 in the polling averages, but a deeper analysis reveals that when we adjust for historical polling trends, Trump could potentially gain a lead of about 7.2, and this marks a noteworthy shift in Michigan's electoral dynamics. The state was anticipated to lean blue in both 2016 and 2020, yet it has shown a propensity to swing in unexpected directions. Given these trends, we categorize Michigan as likely red, emphasizing its evolving political landscape as we approach Election Day. Ohio presents a similar narrative as it has consistently leaned Republican. Polling currently shows Trump with a lead of 7.4. Looking back, he won Ohio by 8 in 2016 and by 3.5 in 2020. When we apply historical adjustments, it becomes evident that Trump could secure Ohio by an impressive 13 points. That solidifies Ohio's classification as a reliably red state, indicating that Trump has maintained a stronghold here. The Republican base in Ohio appears resilient, making the state's electoral significance paramount. Pennsylvania is another crucial state in our analysis, known for its historical electoral significance. Trump's polling averages indicate a slim lead of just 0.3. However, considering the historical context and potential polling inaccuracies, it becomes evident that he might be on track to win Pennsylvania by a more substantial margin of 6 points. The state has fluctuated between parties in recent elections, and Biden's victory in 2020 came after he was projected to win by a more comfortable margin. The prospect of a Republican resurgence in Pennsylvania is very real. prompting us to classify it as likely red. While shifting focus to Nebraska's 2nd Congressional District, we encounter an intriguing situation. Here, Harris has a significant lead in the polls, reported at around 10. However, when we analyze these figures more critically, adjusting for historical polling inaccuracies reveals that her lead may actually be much smaller, about 3.8. This suggests a more competitive race than initially perceived, prompting us to categorize this district as leaning blue, indicating the potential for a tighter contest. As we explore the Northeast, we arrive at New York, a state known for its strong Democratic leanings. Polling suggests that Harris currently has a comfortable lead of approximately 12. However, this figure marks a notable decrease in the expected Democratic performance compared to previous elections. Adjusted projections indicate that she might only win by around 7.3, which would be the worst performance for any Democratic candidate in New York since 1988. This trend highlights an increasing competitiveness in a state that has traditionally been a Democratic stronghold. Consequently, we classify New York as likely blue, recognizing that while Harris is projected to win, the margin is narrowing, hinting at a more competitive race than expected. Next, we look at New Hampshire, where Harris is ahead by 7.4 according to a latest polls. However, upon factoring in adjustments for historical polling errors, her lead decreases to a mere 1.2. This tightening race is particularly noteworthy when considering that Clinton won New Hampshire by a razor-thin margin in 2016. Given these developments, we classify New Hampshire as lean blue. While Harris maintains an advantage, the competitive environment is significant, indicating the potential for shifts in voter sentiment. Maine presents a somewhat similar scenario. Polling suggests that Harris has an 11.7 lead, yet these numbers might reflect inflated expectations. After adjustments, her lead narrows to around 5.5. Although this still places her in a favorable position, the race's competitive nature cannot be overlooked. Therefore, we categorize Maine as likely blue while remaining mindful of its potential for increased competitiveness. In Virginia, the polling indicates that Harris leads by 6.4. However, when we consider historical trends, her lead diminishes to a scant 0.2. Virginia has shown itself to be a competitive state in recent elections, and the shifting political dynamics suggest that it could once again become a battleground. As a result, we classify Virginia as tilt blue, recognizing that it could easily swing in either direction based on voter turnout and campaign efforts. North Carolina is another vital state to consider. Trump holds a narrow lead of 1.2 tier, but historical data suggests that he may have even stronger support than current polling indicates. With a history of Republican victories, and given the trends that have recently favored the GOP, adjust our expectations and classify North Carolina as likely red. This reflects the Republican leanings in the state and the ongoing efforts from both parties to secure voter support. As we venture further south, we come to Georgia, a state that caught many off guard in the 2020 election when Biden managed to flip it by a narrow margin of just 0.24. Presently, polling suggests that Trump has a slight lead of 0.9. However, with adjustments for historical polling inaccuracies, we find that Trump could potentially win Georgia by as much as 7.1. This signals a considerable reversal from the previous election, suggesting that Republican support in Georgia may be regaining momentum. Thus, we categorize Georgia as likely red, recognizing its evolving political landscape. Florida is another state well known for its unpredictable electoral outcomes. Current polling shows Trump with a lead of 6.1, but after adjustments, it appears he might win Florida by an even larger margin of 12.3. That's a strong showing aligns with Republican trends in the state, especially following Ron DeSantis' substantial victory in the governor's race, where he won by nearly 19 points. Given the solid Republican footing, Florida is firmly classified as solidly red, marking it as a significant asset for Trump's campaign. Texas, too, remains firmly in Republican territory, with Trump leading by 6 points in the latest polls. Adjustments indicate he could win Texas by a double-digit margin, reinforcing its classification as a solid red state. Although urban areas in Texas have demonstrated some Democratic gains, the overall demographic and political trends suggest that Trump's support is likely to remain strong. Noting our focus to Colorado and New Mexico, both states have been Democratic strongholds in recent elections but are showing signs of increased competitiveness. In Colorado, polling indicates that Harris is projected to lead by about. However, after adjusting for historical polling errors, her lead shrinks to approximately 4.8. This decline hints at a shift toward a more competitive environment, prompting us to classify Colorado as lean blue. Similarly, in New Mexico, while Harris appears to have a comfortable lead, adjustments reveal that she is ahead by only 1.8. This indicates that New Mexico, too, could be trending toward a more competitive race, leading us to classify it as lean blue, reflecting the potential for closer contests. Finally, we arrive at Arizona, an essential battleground state that has captured national attention in recent elections. The latest polling indicates that Harris leads by around 2. However, when we account for historical polling discrepancies, we find that Trump may gain an additional 3.6 support, which suggests that this race could be tighter than it currently appears. Given Arizona's recent history of flipping between parties, we classify it as tilt red. Both campaigns are expected to pour significant resources into Arizona, recognizing its pivotal role in determining the election outcome. In summary, as we analyze the polling trends and historical data leading up to the November 5th election, it becomes increasingly clear that while these numbers provide critical insights into the electorate's current mood, they come with substantial caveats. Polls can reflect sentiments at a given moment, but are not always reliable predictors of final outcomes. There remains a high potential for shifts in voter sentiment as both parties ramp up their campaigning efforts in these battleground states. Each state presents unique challenges and opportunities, and how candidates navigate this ever-evolving landscape could ultimately determine the election's fate. As we continue to monitor these trends, it's vital to remain cautious in our interpretation of polling data. Historical inaccuracies have shown us that polling can often miss the mark, particularly in fiercely competitive races. The political climate is fluid, and with just weeks remaining, the impact of campaign strategies, debates, and voter turnout initiatives will play a critical role in shaping the final results. I appreciate you joining me today as we delve into these fascinating dynamics and predictions for the upcoming election. I look forward to continuing our discussions as we navigate this pivotal election season together. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more in-depth analysis and insights as we keep a close watch on these evolving narratives.